I think Lloyd Kaufman would call it trash cinema.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I kind of wondered if that was a change point in your character, because it seems like you were playing these violent video games, you were isolated and alone, and it was getting darker.
Yeah.
And then, like, the Virgin Mary shows up.
I get my guts ripped out my own ass.
Hello and welcome back to No Man's Friend. I'm your host, Garrett Van Team, and today I'm here with actor John Karyus. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, Garrett, how's it going?
Really good, and I wanted to start this conversation off with something kind of funny. You texted me and said, could I do the show naked?
I did.
We decided not to, but I wanted to explore that.
That would be funny. I don't know. I don't know if it'd be funny today.
What inspired that idea? You're not a nudist, I don't think.
No, I thought it was a funny text. I didn't expect you to take it so literally.
Oh!
It wasn't an actual idea. It was an idea for a text, not an idea for a podcast.
Got you. We'd been texting about your movies in Psycho Ape, and then you said that, and I was like, oh, he's talking about the Bill Weidman scene.
Yeah,
where he's,
yeah.
like, getting drawn.
Yeah, it's, people out there might not have seen it. It's kind of rare. Well, new, not so much rare. But, it's sort of a spoof of the Titanic drawing. And if you don't know who Bill Weidman is, he's about, like, 80 plus years old, and does a nude scene for this movie as a gag. So
for the audience, what is Psycho Ape the series?
Psycho Ape was made by Addison Binnick, who's a Michigan filmmaker. Very wacky movie. The first one was really wacky. It's playing off slasher movies, but also playing off those 60s kind of ape movies. There was a lot of these sort of ape in a haunted house kind of movies. And it got more popular than those type of movies usually do. Those kind of buy them at a convention table, maybe they're on Tubi level indie movies.
Psycho Ape is more
raw. Yeah.
I think Lloyd Kaufman would call it trash cinema. Lovingly.
Oh yeah. It's definitely fun trash. And Psycho Ape 2 in particular is like plays with what is real, what is the making of the movie, what is the actual movie. Sometimes the making of the movie turns into the movie. Sometimes it pulls back and you see people with boom mics and whatnot. And then
very Holy Grail.
Yeah, it's like the end of the Holy Grail, several layers of that. And I think it was made that way. Of like some bits are scripted, some things are funny things that happened while they were shooting that they happened to catch filming. And then they linked it through improv or, came back another day with a idea that links the two things. And
you're in this film too, the sequel.
Yes, I'm in the sequel. A small role.
Can you tell me about your role? Because I know you're in the court scene.
Trying to play myself. He introduced me by my name, John Karyus, an expert on. I guess I am an expert on these movies. I sure have watched enough of them. But, I'm an expert on these movies, and I'm talking about why the first Psycho Ape is so great on trial. They were spoofing several movies in that. They were spoofing one of the Tom Cruise court ones. Maybe both. There's The Firm, and then there's the one with Jack Nicholson. They were spoofing those, and also Psycho 2. The whole movie is kind of Psycho 2 in that is the ape the killer of this one, or is somebody else trying to frame him for their killings? Which, as far as I
that was one of the strangest parts of the movie, because it's like he's like in a family with the guy who was hunting him in the first movie in Kansas Bowling. That part makes sense. They were already kind of into each other.
Questions about that are more for Greg or Addison if you ever have them on the show. I like that a lot. That's how the enemies if Bill Weidman plays a character who's basically Donald Pleasance in Halloween. In the first Psycho Ape, or Van Helsing, or whatever, out to get the Psycho Ape, big time.
Mm-hmm.
It cuts 25 years, and they're like a three-way married family
Yeah.
It's unexplained.
And I love that it's 25 years, too.
Oh, and it keeps...
none of them aged.
in different directions, but it doesn't really matter. It's still semi-linear as much as it's ever going to be. So, Psycho Ape 2 is an extremely crazy movie. You don't know what's going to happen moment to moment, but it does cycle around this court scene and an overall Psycho 2 vibe of who is the killer, because it doesn't seem to be the same ape. The same ape seems reformed.
This is such a weird comparison, but I found the viewing experience was weirdly similar for me to Beau is Afraid. Because I'm not sure what all the connections were, but it all surrounded, in that movie, the idea of the Freudian concept of the devouring mother. That was my takeaway, is that everything was kind of about that, but you didn't quite understand why these scenes were happening or where they were going.
Yeah, I kind of got that. I saw Beau is Afraid in the theater. I liked it a lot, but there's a feeling, and there's a lot of modern movies like this. This is an extreme of it, but there's a few others like this, where it's linear, like everything happens in order, but you're sort of just swimming to like an ending that you're not quite sure you're ever going to get to. And I think the long running times, it drives some people crazy, but I think that's part of it. That's part of its art.
Yeah, that slow burn. I mean, I don't know if it's exactly the first scene, but the part where he's facing off against all the homeless people in Oregon, where it's basically Portland.
Yeah, and I found that opening section to be, there's a certain type of 80s comedy that's in like a really wacko world. Almost like Mad Magazine, where people in the background are doing weird things. Troma took this and ran with it. But it's sort of like these, they're slightly druggy movies, I think. These sort of like 80s comedies, and there's a couple known people in them, but they tend to be fairly indie before indie was like a marketable thing. But I think they were made and then sold to companies or something. And that first, 20 to 40 minutes of Beau is Afraid, like before he leaves his apartment, and is kind of like navigating this world that's like hostile, but yet all the degenerates and crazies seem to get along and have a party. They're not fighting each other. They're just fighting him. It's one of these sort of 80s weird movies, and then it just keeps going into weird territory. Psycho Ape's a little different in that, or Psycho Ape 2 anyway, in that it's overtly a comedy. Beau is Afraid is a comedy, but it's like there's some disturbing moments and thought-provoking moments and things like that. Psycho Ape its goal is to like have a good time.
Before we continue with the interview, here is the trailer for Psycho Ape 2.
Oh my god, we're such a happy couple.
So happy.
Just like the best possible.
Yeah. Did you bring the bananas?
Yeah, you want to crack one open?
Oh yeah.
Let's enjoy a banana together.
That sounds like a great idea. What a beautiful idea.
Yes, I love it.
Oh, it's such a good time.
It's the most beautiful day of the year. 2:16 p.m. on June 7th. We're here in the park, and we couldn't be more safe and happy.
I couldn't agree more. It is 2:16 p.m. on June 7th, and there's no possible chance that we're about to be murdered.
Nope.
Oh my god, no! We can be polyamorous!
Gavel! Gavel! Gavel.
So you're saying that it's true that the Psycho Ape did in fact kill you?
We were murdered by the Psycho Ape.
We're here today in Hollywood! Can you say hi to my followers? Big love. Oh!
Of course.
Nancy, I am your father.
Whoa!
And your brother and your sister.
Whoa.
And we've been sleeping in the same bed for many, many years.
Oh, that's so gross.
It's all right.
Oh, okay.
I want you to draw me like one of your French gorillas. Wearing this. Only this.
Psycho Ape. It's okay. In no time, all three of us are going to be loving each other.
I would say we're in kind of an odd era of postmodern filmmaking. They're not quite linear, but they are they are linear, but they don't feel completely connected. And it's like upturning, almost on purpose, conventions of storytelling.
Let's have things set up that never pay off, or pay off way different than you expect, or pay off exactly like you expect, but it goes wah 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 like that.
Yeah.
They're calling the modern trend of it meta modern.
Yeah, for sure. Beau's Afraid is a great example. I was lucky enough to see that one in theaters as well.
Yeah.
And there weren't too many people in the theater, but I was definitely in a group, or the people in the movie with us, we're all just kind of in constant shock of what we were watching. Like, I don't think anyone was expecting to see what we saw. So everyone, the night of, was like, what? Like, that was these very visceral, loud reactions to everything that happened. And then when the, bit of a spoiler, but when the, kind of, because there's no context, I won't give the context, but when the penis monster shows up, a couple just shot up and left. Like, no, we're done.
I had a moment like that. It was actually really funny. I was in those 2 years I went home, and I was in Rochester, New York, which does have a weird art scene and stuff like that, but it's not like LA where there's literally you throw a rock and you hit someone who's made a movie. I saw The Lobster, and The Lobster was at the beginning of this trend that we're talking about. And there was this old guy, older than me. I'm an old guy now too, I guess. But this is like old, like Bill Whedon old. He sat through the whole thing and kind of groaning through each weird shift. But it gets to the moment where it's like someone dares him, go in the room and stab your eye out or something like that. And he's like got the knife to his eye. He's going to stab his eye out. That guy groans loud, walks out of the theater. And then the movie ends. He made it all the way to like a minute from the end. And it's like if he had just stuck a minute more to, I think it ended up ambiguously. I haven't seen that movie in like 6-7 years.
Speaking of weird films, you were the star of one that I actually really enjoyed watching. First Person Savior.
Yes. That's, I'm not often a lead. I'm a character actor, so I'm like Psycho Ape II, I'm in one little bit. Oftentimes I show up, get killed, in funny ways.
Or mutated, zombified.
In your movie, I'm zombified, kind of a Borg zombie. And that movie, Ramsey Abed, I had known for more than a decade, who directed that movie. He's made 7 or 8 really cool, weird indie movies that are on the fringe of movies, kind of like what we're talking about. You kind of have to know where to look to find them, although they do occasionally pop up on Tubi and Troma now and some of these other sites. He had this idea, and it was kind of free-form, semi-improv at the time anyway. We're going to shoot this movie, and you're kind of a loner, one of these sort of... a bit nerdier and dorkier than a taxi driver, but it's in that vein of a, troubled loner type. That was what he gave you as your character analysis? Because I wouldn't think of a taxi driver as dorky or nerdy. No. I was saying I'm dorky and nerdy, where that guy quite wasn't. Although there's things he says, but it's in that. You mean the movie Taxi Driver? The movie Taxi Driver, yeah. I get what you're saying now. Okay. Loner, and also the modern problem we have now of these guys kind of shooting up the mall or the Batman screening or whatever. And it was sort of this free-flowing project. And it ended up a lot of structure to it. Like, there's definite, and I think that was in his head, it just wasn't written down, because it's sort of like you start to lose track of times, but there's these sort of placeholders that you can tell a different day is happening, and he goes to work every day, goes on the bus.
Yeah, there's a repetition of the routine.
This routine, and he's sort of becoming detached from reality. And that's also like hard to talk about it really with no spoilers, but certain aspects of the his overall path, you're not quite exactly sure what happened. Like, did he go through with it? Did he chicken out? Was it all a dream? Did he never even get to the area? Is sort of within the movie. And I know one thing about that movie, technically, is it was shot over the period of a few months. There was a big day, like a big weekend, I should say, that were scenes with, like, other actors. Like the mother and the actress who played Mary. And it's a guy getting sucked into video games. Like all he does is work and go home and play the games. And the games aren't exactly fun. They're just more like an obsession and working out his frustrations and everything. And it seems like the rest of the world is just sort of shitting on him.
But there's something else going on, because you play the video games, and then it's almost like I thought what was happening was like you were having some kind of, I don't even know what to call it. It wasn't quite a conversation, but like these instances where you're like either becoming some kind of weird cosmic entity, or you're being reached out to by them. Like there's lights, and you become silhouette with the like crazy red lasers.
I'm glad you noticed that. I wasn't sure if that's because that cited maybe a subtext. But that's in there. That was talked about a little bit, me and Ramsey, but none of it said overtly of like whether it's a delusional, I think there's a higher power, or there actually is a higher power is kind of ambiguous. And I know as an actor, the movie can be ambiguous. How you play it, you got to play it like this is really happening. So if you're crazy and you're talking to yourself, that other version of yourself is 100% real because you're seeing it as real. And that there's humor in that movie. I'd put it more in a satire than a comedy. But it's not humor, ha ha ha, like Psycho Ape 2. It's more just like strange ways of saying things or strange moments. I thought the three guys that were the coworkers were kind of funny. Like a comic relief guy. And the lead guy in particular is actually a comic, a stand-up comic.
Okay.
Chad.
I thought your job in the movie was funny because you just sweep like the top level of a parking garage, and the other guys kept saying, we'll start at the bottom, but then they just stood over in the corner and watched you.
They don't do anything.
And you don't really do anything. Who needs to sweep the top level of a parking garage every day?
That hit me. I made a joke of this to Ramsey. He was in on the joke of like, what is this guy's job? Who knows? And the sort of put down aspect, like you're pounded down. It actually was, if he gets paid for that, it's actually not that bad, other than it was in the sun. Like I got sunburned that day. Other than it being in the sun, that job wasn't too bad. But those guys it was like I was a jester or something. Like I was there literally to entertain those guys. Which adds to the surrealism of it. And that movie had a kind of non-reality reality, where it's hyper-realistic. It was so disoriented from time, and that you don't know if this movie is taking place over 3-4 days, or if it's more like a year. I don't think it would be longer than a year and a half, but its sense of time is off. If I got a haircut or needed to get a haircut or something like that, or didn't shave or shaved for another movie, or just work was yelling at me or whatever, it was okay. So there's like, sometimes I'm really shaggy, I had to grow my hair out for another movie, or maybe that was the beginning. Sometimes I'm clean shaven. It adds to that distortion of time. I found myself on the same page as Ramsey on a lot of things. When we were talking about what this movie is going to be like, we were sort of reminiscing of what I call film threat movies. They're sort of indie movies that are really weird, really cheap, usually shot on like 16 millimeter, a little bit before the Tarantino, Kevin Smith wave. And I would have seen these movies on VHS, or sometimes I grew up near Canada. Sometimes they'd be on Canadian TV.
Okay.
And he had a nostalgia for the same thing.
Could you give me more details on that? Because I am curious, like, how you as an actor juggle the vision you have of the character you're given with the person who's leading the vision of the film.
That might be the eternal struggle of all actors. With Ramsey, it was a perfect collaboration in that it was 85% we saw this movie exact same way. I left the editing and the music, all of that up to him. He did get the music before we finished shooting. Like, hey, what do you think of this music? It was great. I thought the music was a highlight of that movie, put you in the mood of like this sort of repetitive intensity. That's where the art lies, and that like there's a question mark on there. You know, and okay. I've always find work with a question mark. I'm trying to draw it on the screen here. Interesting. Work with like you don't know what this quite meant. You have an idea it meant vaguely this, but every once in a while something contradicts.
Speaking of question marks, one of my biggest ones on the film, I can understand if you don't want to give a spoiler, but I'm curious if you as the actor know. So there's you're playing the video games and you're having these cosmic existential moments where it's very dark and you're like a silhouette with all the lights. But then later in the film, there's also a moment where a more specific deistic figure shows up.
That's that scene when he had her, she's in the, like the pictures and things on Facebook and all that. So I don't think it's a, spoiler. It's the Virgin Mary, just to, get it out there. Maybe we're in a spoiler zone, but let's not spoil the whole ending or whatever. But,
for sure.
The deity aspect of that, like, we talked about it, like, as we were getting ready to shoot it, and not just that day, like weeks before. This happens and blah, blah, blah. But when he had her over and she sits there and got the robe on and the halo thing and lit her just that, like, one spotlight. And then there was, like, Christmas lights and things around.
I liked that detail. It was interesting that she kind of appeared and it was weirdly analog.
Yeah, and all the lighting and stuff, as far as I know, is like analog things, like stuff he got at Party City and whatever, like weird little gadgets. That deity, when he had her all set up, it was like, okay, this is the scene, this is the movie that we're making, and this is the image people will really remember. There's almost like a Monty Python element to it, where she just straight up starts talking, very matter of fact. And it's also the most unnerving. Like, this is some people get unsettled by this, and seeing it real live as it sort of all the, you know, Erica was her name. She's unfortunately passed away now, actually. She came by and you know, the normal, hung out at the snack table or whatever, and then you know, got into the Virgin Mary robe, and Ramsey set up the lighting, and there was a couple other crew guys there that day as well. When I saw that, like, just in the corner of the room, and like the TV's here and she's like next to the TV, it's like, this is genuinely a weird movie. That this moment right here is really weird, and it's like, we're going for it. This is what we're doing. And I know there's a wide shot of the whole room. I'm on one side of the room, she's on the other, and the mother comes through and stops at the middle.
That's the shot I have in my head when I think about it.
Yeah.
Just that wide with all of you guys.
Yeah, and that's like a really good, like, weird, cool moment. And like they call that the tableau, like everything, like one character here, almost like you're setting up a painting. And then all the riffraff, like the collectibles and things that just happen to be there, really added to that. And it's like, I think that keen visual eye that Ramsey had mixed with just had the right group of people. They were on board.
again, to the cosmic entity part, that's not, to me, it doesn't ring as specifically like that's not Satan or anything, or it feels dark and scary. But then you get the confirmation of the Virgin Mary. So I'm just wondering, as the actor, did you know what was going on with all of that?
Oh,
like
so
what were those
your original
moments?
questions? I think no. I didn't know what was going on with all that. I'll be honest, I didn't. I didn't really care. Like I said, I play it as real, Virgin Mary as Virgin Mary. If it's a delusion, I deluded the Virgin Mary. If it's a weird entity messing with me, it appeared as the Virgin Mary, and I took it as is, as written. So that's what it is.
Because I kind of wondered if that was a change point in your character, because it seems like you were playing these violent video games, you were very isolated and alone, and it was getting darker. Yeah. And then, like, the Virgin Mary shows up, and I don't know if that is a cleansing moment or that's the savior moment. We're not totally sure.
It's weird, because it's like a cleansing moment and a savior moment, but it's also what sets him on the really dark path.
Right. Like,
it's like Anakin Skywalker's weird dream about Padme or whatever. It's like, it is the moment that turns him. And all of Ramsey's work, it's interesting. It's all like, there's a discussion to be had after you've seen it. You know, it's like, we did a sort of sneak preview. Some of Ramsey's friends showed up. Some of my friends showed up. And I remember a guy came up to me that I knew vaguely. He was a friend of Ramsey's, but I'd met him, like, you know, film things, different screenings and things. And he was kind of like, it was almost like you didn't have like your character was such a put on that he didn't even have the guts to fully go nuts. And that was another weird interpretation. It wasn't a negative, like, I hate this movie because you didn't have the guts or whatever. It was almost like that was an interesting take on it. You know, the way you say it now in context is like, oh, you didn't have the guts to make that in the movie. No, it was more like it was about that somehow. That, like, your guy was such a wuss, he even wussed out on that. And it was like, yeah, that's an interesting take too. And it's like, my take was slightly different than Ramsey's, but like I said, there was a major overlap. But yeah,
I can see there being an avenue there, because you were talking earlier about the people who do go crazy in basements and end up doing things. How many people have those ideations but don't have the gumption to go through with anything?
Yeah,
scary thought.
Right when we were shooting that's when the one happened in Buffalo that I was from.
During the filming? Like around the same span of
time,
months?
Either right before, or maybe we did a couple shoots and then it happened. I don't remember the dates of everything.
Yeah.
But I remember...
Did that play into how you characterized it?
I definitely didn't want to glorify it. I didn't want to glorify it before, but I definitely did not want to glorify it after that. That one hit a little too close to home, like literally 12 miles or something from where I grew up. So I don't have a problem with glorifying violence, or I like action movies and whatever, slasher movies and things that get criticized for this. I might have a problem glorifying a specific instance. Like,
I would agree with you. I think, though, that the trying to explore and showcase the mentality that gets people to this point is somewhat necessary in exploration of art. Like, yes. I don't think that should always be seen as glorifying, because, you know, you push things into the margins, they get worse, and people become resentful when they don't feel they have a voice or an outlet.
Curiosity too of like that guy. I read more about him than I'd read about any mass shooter that there was. And then there was a point there with so many mass shooters, they blended into one. Like, I quit reading the articles and stuff. Cause
I remember that. It feels like we don't... I wonder if it's actually gone down or we just don't hear about it as much. with like
I got
news and shit.
Desensitized to it when I was in college. That's when the Columbine, and there was this one a little before Columbine in Arkansas happened, and when I first heard those, it was like, whoa. Really kind of reading a lot about it and stuff. It was sort of a new kind of thing, and now it's just like, oh, geez, not another one. They're like, how did this become like a plague, kind of? And I don't think you can explore that in film or any art in hopes to find an answer. To bring it back to Ramsey's movie, I think the abstract nature of it helps a lot. Like, it shows outside of the norm, so you see it like this might be what this particular version of the sky is seeing, as well as it's not just like raw reality. There is sort of a this is still a work of art. This is someone's interpretation of it. This isn't what actually happened. This is like what an interpretation of several instances of this kind of conglomerated.
Before we continue with the second part of this interview, I wanted to give you, the audience, an opportunity to actually watch the trailer for First Person Savior. Here it is.
Morning, Abe.
Morning, Daryl.
So we're working a late shift tonight. So me and the guys, we have to start on the bottom level. But if you could pick up here on the top level, well, hopefully we meet at the bottom, okay?
As in Abraham?
Yeah.
Son of Seth, third son of Adam under God. Honest Abe, Abraham Lincoln?
Yeah.
Just messing with you.
Excuse me? I've got a gun.
I want to know how many films you've been in, and maybe which role is your favorite.
That's hard. They're all favorites in different ways. According to IMDb, I think I'm at 89. I know of at least 2 not on IMDb yet. Features, you subtract maybe 12 of those, because some of those are shorts. Favorite... Man,
or at least one of. We don't have to crown it at the top of the S tier.
I think it's impossible. They're all different and all the same. Like the ones that come up the most are Killjoy 4, where I played Skidmark, the villain of a Full Moon franchise, a villain of that entry of it, which was sort of similar to Las Vegas Frankenstein, like the same voice, which I play an Igor-type character, but that was a more sympathetic take. The Killjoy 4 was, Killjoy Goes to Hell, it's called, was...
I love that movie, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Was a villain, although that's a spoiler, not known as a villain, and a joke, like the comic relief before it's revealed he's a villain, where Las Vegas Frankenstein, there's more of a heart to the character. And that character is a complete innocent, although he does the killing in the movie. He's manipulated into the killing. Is an innocent, not a... So it's like funny, the characters are the same, but they're like two sides of the same coin in a way. And then...
It's kind of two different versions of Lenny from Mice and Men.
Yes. And it's an Igor, but it's more of a Lenny, the way that it's played. Because Igor is like a weird hunchback. It's more straight. And it's funny, on set is like, I was doing a different voice, and it wasn't working, and I'm kind of like, maybe I should just use my normal voice. And Tom Devlin, who was directing it, and this wasn't the shoot, this was like a rehearsal before the shoot. I want it more like Skidmark. And I'm like, do you want it actually Skidmark? And he's like, yes. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. And sort of the joke was Skidmark's like a Beetlejuice. Is he a demon or a ghost? It's kind of unclear, but he's something from the spirit realm. They are kind of like Lenny in Mice and Men, like an innocent, but he's the one that chokes the girl at the end of that, and all, you know. So they do manipulate or do misunderstand things. That particular character type. And then, the Troma one, Poultrygeist, where I play the Peeper, is another classic, where I get my guts ripped out my own ass in the opening scene of that movie, which is a death I think I've yet to top, and that movie is nearing 20 years old. No one has killed me in a more graphic or gruesome way. And Troma, of course, is notorious for crazy deaths, and it's always in the top 10 deaths. The number one is always that kid who gets his head run over.
Yes. Was that Toxic Avenger?
One, yeah.
One or
and
two?
that started
yes.
the Troma look of, like, we smash heads and it's melons and things.
I always think of that scene whenever... Well, it pops back into my head when Hereditary came out, because everyone was talking about the girl hitting her head and how they've never seen movies that were... And I even remember news stories saying, like, have movies reached a new level of grotesque? And I'm like, dude, Troma did that. Like,
they did. The tone's
like,
different, though.
Even worse.
Yeah.
The tone's different, but, like, those characters are almost scarier because they're so relentlessly
I saw
awful.
That movie. I was, like a lot of us, too young to properly have seen that movie. That kind of freaked me out. The characters, how joyful they were, of like, we killed them. And I was about that age. And I don't think it disturbed me. Like, I slept fine. I didn't have nightmares about it or anything. But there was a little bit of like, whoa. Like, I ride my bike and sometimes these cars get a little too close. Are these guys out there? I was like 8 or 9, 1985, 86, something like that. And that's one of those weird 80s things where, like, the most graphically fucked up movies you could find, clearly R-rated. I think that one was officially R-rated, not unrated. Marketed for kids anyway.
with toys and action figures, a cartoon.
And RoboCop, same thing. They did it with that Rambo.
Lloyd Kaufman laughing his ass off.
Yeah, I love it. Like, we grew up, or at least I did, sort of a crazy time for kids media. Like, injecting your brain every day with the craziest shit. And there's criticism of that these days, and also a romanticism of it. I think I'm more on the romanticism side of it. Sometimes I see their point of... I definitely don't want movies censored or anything like that. I'm all for that. Maybe that period did go too far with showing it to kids, but I don't know. Like,
I'm more in the romantic side. My thought on it is... There's never been any proof that violent movies cause violence in people. The proof actually that's been shown recently is the opposite.
You see Jason slash 5 people as opposed to, you know, and they're sort of caricatures. They're like symbols of the jock. They're symbols of the cheerleader. They're not actually your jock and your cheerleader at your school. I'm on the romanticism side of, like, that was a really fun, cool time.
I also wonder if there's something to, I don't know what you'd call it, necessary trauma, because that's a fairly mundane one where you're not going to die from watching a movie.
Yeah, it's like riding a roller coaster. You have to do it, and it gets you ready for driving a real car and hitting a patch of ice or something. But like, yeah, that sometimes I find, like, people way younger than us. This is the old man, oh my god, these kids don't know what they're doing or whatever. But it seems like half of them are more into these movies even than we were. Maybe a fourth of them are more. Like, they know the name, like, oh, when he kills Tina, blah, 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 blah. It's like, which one was Tina? And it's like the one that gets the axe in her head or whatever. I'm using loose terms because I don't know the names on. Sometimes I know the final girl names, but they know like all the names, and they're watching them almost in a different way. Of like, they really liked those characters before they got it. Where I remember getting like just kill them, and now as an adult, I'm seeing it a little bit from their view. Of like, oh yeah, these characters were fun and cute and funny or whatever. Like Crispin Glover in part 4 was great. That weird dance he did and stuff. But I remember real bonding over those movies, like on the bus. People like, did you see the new Friday the 13th? Oh man, this girl gets smashed on a tree. You won't believe it. They picked up the sleeping bag and smashed her in the tree. Whoa, whoa. And like half the kids had cable, half didn't. So it's like getting this word of mouth thing going that paints a picture in your mind that's way more fucked up than it actually was. And people, like, lifetime friendships were made in those moments. Like, I'm still that same guy. I'll go to a reunion or something. Hey, you told me about Jason getting the axe right here and the slides right down. That was fucking crazy. And I didn't see that movie for like another 3 years. And when I actually saw it, your story of it was like better. And like there is something, but it's like there's that fourth that's into it more than even we were. And then there's another group that's like afraid of literally everything.
They think it's harmful.
Yeah, and they're like, that meme goes around, like, how did the generation that grew up on South Park get offended by everything? And all I can think of is like people rebel against their parents. So maybe their parents are like guys our age or something who grew up on this stuff, so they're like, I don't like this stuff. I think even talking about this sort of goes on a bad path of you sound kind of like, or at least I am right now, the old guy who doesn't get it. I am.
Well, we could always just make it political. I can just blame ideology
that's the worst
and
one.
then
You add the politics into it.
Let's right at the tail end. Welcome to hour 2.
Am continually interested into what younger filmmakers are making. Like, what are not only what they're making, but what are there for movies that are kind of making people like movies that I might not have heard of. So I've heard of, say, I saw the TV Glow and these. They were in the theater and all that. What are the weird movies that you came across in your surfing, if you're like 12 and into movies? What are they? And so I'll pay attention to these kids and these guys, hopefully to work with them someday. What are there like 4 or 5 movies? And the 3 that you've heard of, yeah, there's always going to be whatever the big movie is at the time. But I heard of Ink That Way, which is, it's on Tubi now, but at the time it was like this weird indie movie that got known because it was the most downloaded on Pirates Bay or something like that. And that's kind of a cool movie. They drift into this dream world. I don't want to talk about it too much because it's not a podcast about that. But it's more like, yeah, I found out about that movie because it was cool with this younger crowd. So you got to kind of turn your eye to it, even if some of their stuff... I saw a thing of Werner Herzog saying, like, do not shield yourself from the Jerry Springers and he was talking about all wrestling, all this sort of really lowbrow stuff because there's like opera in it and also just understanding where people come from. So people that their outlook is different than you should try to figure out what their stuff actually is. Now, if they're hyper cynical and don't like anything, then yeah, fuck them. But if they're liking sort of oddball things or even normal things, but normal things you didn't come across yet, like there's whole wide regions of things that you might not get to, like anime or something. You should always turn a key eye to like, oh, where's the starting point of this path? And it might not be your thing, but you at least kind of get like, okay, they don't like this, but they like this. And it's kind of about this, you know, and you kind of start to digest other viewpoints. And I think a big reason I became an actor is to kind of merge with viewpoints like that, merge with people's strange idea of what the world is or something, and kind of act it out.
That's a great end note. You just said and act it out. I like that, because acting in movies allow us to play through stories in a way that doesn't necessarily have a direct impact on the world. It can culturally, but it's not like you're actually murdering and maiming or becoming evil, but we get to explore those concepts in an artistic medium. I think that's great.
Other end, you're not going on dates as romantic as in that Julia Roberts movie or something, but like you're exploring that avenue, and you're seeing other people's dreams in a way. Like, as best as you can. You can't outright plug in, and there's movies about that, Dreamscape and recording dreams. I think there's a Black Mirror episode or whatever. But, like, I don't think the technology could ever be there to not make it just look like grainy, which is its own aesthetic, like a pixel camera. Fisher-Price pixel is how I think a recorded dream would kind of look like. Like, it's just too...
I know what you mean.
I don't think what we're seeing is what we're seeing. I think we're seeing crap like that, and our memory of it is a story or whatever. Sort of like they used to say you dreamt in black and white. It's like we're really seeing just sort of crap, and it's being like
interpreted,
painted over through our imagination. Yeah, we're seeing something like our food digesting into our brain cells or something. And that's what we'd see if protein.
That's interesting. I think it's one of the greatest things that humans do is they dream up ideas, and one of the coolest art forms we have is to put those dreams into a way that we can share them with other people. And honestly, I just thank you so much for speaking with me today, man. I've appreciated getting to walk through the dreams you've lived out.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad. And these movies, they are out and about. The ones we talked about the most today are probably the newest, which I'm always glad. Like a band tired of playing their one-hit wonder, you want to talk about your new stuff. So the Psycho Ape II will be playing in Shelbyville, Indiana, near where you used to live, at the Skyline Drive-In as part of the Severin sleepover. That is September 21st, 2024, if you're watching this podcast some unknown point in the future. And then First Person Savior, which we've spent some considerable time on, September 15th, it's only a couple weeks away, in Buffalo, New York, my hometown of Buffalo. So I hope I didn't spoil it too much. It's a little too weird to spoil. It's like finding out Laura Palmer died or something. It's like, it had no effect at all.
It's an experiential film, so if anybody does get the opportunity to see it, I'd recommend it.
And Psycho Ape is available. I got a little note here. It's actually distributing in a very strange and interesting way. Addison's eBay is how you get it. You go on eBay and you buy it, a physical copy. I don't know. It seems to work great.
I always see him posting about that on Instagram and stuff.
It gets the right crowd.
Cases
it doesn't
of them.
get a mainstream crowd, but it gets a interested crowd.
All right, John. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Always good talking to you, and have a great day.